All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about layouts here. Now, the argument always was that layouts don't matter. And when I've always said layouts don't matter, I mean to the point of the everyday bowler. The regular league bowler who's bowling league, even if they're bowling a couple nights a week, in most cases, we're talking about a visual difference of what you see on the lanes, assuming you're not using these crazy layouts, right? Like you're not going with a 1-inch pin versus a 5-inch pin. Clearly, you're going to see a difference between those two. They're going to flare a whole lot different. So yes, there is going to be a difference there. Now, but when we're talking about a layout like, let's say, a 3.5-inch pin versus a 4.5-inch pin, you're not going to see a difference. Now, the really good bowlers, the guys on tour, there is a distinct advantage of changing by an inch, because that does change the response time going through the pins, where the ball sets up, how the ball starts to roll through the pins, those little things. So I don't want anybody to get confused and think that I ever meant that layouts just don't matter. And the reason I say this right now is because I know after I go through this video I'm about to talk about with layouts and the changes I'm making, there's going to be somebody that's going to be like, well, I thought you said layouts don't matter. I have to make sure I put that out there. So what we're talking about today is the layouts of the changes that I'm making in efforts to score a little bit better out on tour patterns. Now, a lot of you have known that I've struggled with keeping up score-wise out on tour. It's not a matter of making better shots. It's not a matter of making spares. It's just been finding ways to get that extra hit or two a game that has been causing problems. So while I'm averaging 210 or bowling 210 and the scoring pace is 225, I'm falling behind and I feel like I'm bowling a good game. I'm missing the pocket once and I'm bowling 210, whereas these guys are, missing the pocket 2 times and they're bowling 230. That makes it, it's a struggle to hold up because you're not getting your ball to do the right things going through the pins. And a lot of the issue that I've always had is because I'm such a low axis tilt player. I'm close to 0. I worked really hard trying to get my axis tilt up, and even with all the work that I did, the fit changes, the release changes, I still only ever got it up to about 9 degrees, I think was the highest I ever got it, which is still classified as a low tilt player. We want to be, if you want to have a little bit more versatility in your layouts, you want to be above 13 degrees. You want to be 13 to like 18, somewhere in there. Then you have an awful lot of options for layouts. So I actually was finding success in doing well in events in spite or despite my layouts that I was using, because I was using a lot of layouts that weren't necessarily good for me and for a lower tilt type of player. They weren't layouts that would allow me to get the ball to do the right thing, so I had to rely a lot on making a ton of hand changes to get the ball to do the things that I wanted them to do. So now I've refused to do this for the longest time because it didn't make sense to me, and still in my head I'm trying to get it to make sense, but I'm listening to a couple of different people, I'm trying different things, and I'm working on using shorter pin distances in order to retain axis tilt a little bit longer. Because in the way I'm seeing things is my ball gets going too forward too fast on the lane, which means I'm losing rotation too quick, which makes me feel like I have to try to rotate it more, which then makes my ball more responsive to friction. And that's where the problem lies. Now my ball is more responsive to friction, which means if there's early friction, or if my ball is seeing the lane too quick, it forces me to go too far left. Now I'm giving up entry angle. I'm having a hard time getting my ball to go through the pins the right way. And that's where the struggle starts. So let me explain to you what happens with the core when we lay them out in a couple of different ways. So with the core, this would be the top of the core. This would be where the pin is, right? So when you're laying this out, let's say I have, that typical 45 by 4.5 by 45, which puts the pin basically directly above my bridge for me. So if I'm holding the ball, it's going to be like this, right? So that pin's going to be right up here above my fingers, and when I release the ball, it's going to be boom, and it's going to be rotating like this, okay? So here's the issue that I have. Now, that's 45 degrees. So now if I go with you know, like a 5-inch pin. Now we're moving that pin even further, yes, even further this way. So now it's going to be up like over here for me. So now you're seeing that wobble in the top of the core be in this position over here instead of the 45 here. The 45 is actually the better layout in a lot of cases because it takes its time, or it makes a motion. It starts to gradually get to a point. Because a core has to get to its stable position, right? And that stable position for something like this, or for most cores, is when it's laying on its side and it's just rolling like this, when it's rolling forward. This upside down like this is not stable. This is still creating a wobble. It wants to get to a position like this that is more equal around all 4 edges of the core. It's trying to get to this. Now, this is exactly how it was explained to me. I don't know that it's necessary. It makes sense to me this way, so bear with me here. Maybe there's a industry expert that knows a little bit more about this that can chime in here, but the way it was explained to me is now when I push this core this way, away from the center of my grip, so now it's over here and the core is wobbling this way as I release it, right? Now it's got to find its way all the way over, and when it gets to a tipping point and friction starts to take over, that core goes from the top position here and it just drops off and it falls to here to get to that roll. And that's why my bowling balls get so forward once they see friction. So the friction makes the core get to its stable position much faster, and it makes it that quick motion. So the ball gets quicker as it gets there and it's rolling like this. What I need to do is I need to actually start the core in these positions where it's over here, and it can't just fall off. It retains this axis rotation and doesn't fall off the cliff and go this way super fast. It's not going to go from here to here to here, slow, 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 quick. It's going to be here and then slow, 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 all the way down. So I can get that continuous motion and be a little bit more versatile with the things that I'm trying to do. So when you start laying the core closer to your axis, now we're not talking like 1 inch or like right here. So if my axis is here, we're not talking about laying it like this. I'm talking about that 2.5 to 3 inch motion like this. So now your release is getting it to wobble this way here, and now it's going to basically be wobble, 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 wobble until it gets all the way over to here, and then it's rolling forward. So it's just doing that. So there's no quick motion, there's no snap of the core. And so this, where people get confused, is they think, oh, you start going under 3 3/8, now you're starting to give it less flair, and that's just not the case. You go to 2 3/8, that's basically the same as like a 4 3/8 inch pin, because it's still going to flare that amount until you get to a specific spot, like at 1.5 inches or so from your PAP, until you're really laying that core down. The flare doesn't start to go down. There's a specific spot. I don't remember what he said the number was. I think it's 1.5. Or maybe it's a 1 3/4. I don't know. There's a specific distance that then you start to really reduce the flare of the bowling ball. And the same thing the opposite way. Until you get to like 5 3/4 or something, you don't start really noticeably reducing flare on the ball until you get far enough away. So we have to find positions, for me as a low tilt player, or maybe for you as a low tilt player, we've got to find positions to keep that core in a good position to where it's retaining that wobble longer before it drops off and completely goes forward. So for me, I'm trying to use some shorter pin distances with still good flare, and we've got to do some kind of tricky things in order to get it to where the bow tie doesn't hit the thumb, so you don't hear the thumping down the lane. My first couple of tests actually did hit the thumb on the backside because it flares all the way around the ball, and then it hits the backside on the thumb because it flares so much, because we're using max flare, because I have too high of a rev rate to be able to use those types of layouts without hitting the thumb in front of the pins. That causes a problem because now it's changing the direction right in front of the pins. So as much as I loved the motion from front to back until it started to hit the thumb, I have to change it just a little bit. So let me show you what we actually have to do. All right, so here we have the new 3D offset Assault. And it is a big ASIM core, big differential. And because of the differential, because of the flare potential, I have to use numbers to get it to flare less and get it to not hit. I have to move the bow tie. So where before I tried like a 70 by 2 3/4 inch pin by 30, and it would put it like here up over my you know, right up over here, if I show you here, is like here, where the pin was over, way over here to like the stacked leverage type of layout for most people. And then the ball would flare on this side. It would go all the way around to here, and then it would clip the thumb right here, and I would hit the thumb as it flared on this side. So what I actually have to do is I have to use bigger third angles so I can bring the pin down and make it over here, so now the bow tie gets moved down away from the thumb and I don't clip that thumb. So everything moves away from the thumb. So it's still going to flare, maybe flare a little bit less, but it's going to be moved away from the thumb. And now with that lower third angle, it makes it a little bit quote unquote slower response to the friction, so it doesn't fall off that cliff either. So what we're going to do is find a pencil like this. I always get asked, everybody always asks me, where do I find these pencils? They're the retractable wax pencil, basically. They're on Amazon. Just go right on Amazon. That's all I ever do is just buy them on there. So just type in like, just type in grease pencil or wax pencil, and these ones will show up, and they're just retractable. And they come in different colors too. So anyway, so we're going to draw a straight line here. Let me get you in a better position. All right, so what we're going to do is we draw that straight line through the pin to the mass bias, right? And now we want to go, and I'm going to go 60 on the first angle. Let's go 60. Draw a line straight through that. Now I am going to use that short pin. I'm going to go 2 3/8. Let's go 2 3/8. So that's basically essentially like a 4 3/8 pin. A little bit bigger pin in that aspect. Put the 0 right back on there. Now I have to go with the big number, so I'm going to go with 70 degrees. I'm going to go all the way over here, which kicks that angle really big. This between here and here is 70 degrees, right? And then this between this and this is 70 degrees or 60 degrees. And then we have the pin distance from here to here, which is 2 3/8, okay? So now my axis is off of this line. Which line is it? This one. Off of this line, I am an inch and, what did I move to? I'm an inch and 7/8 down now, or an inch and 7/8 up, so I got to make that mark down. And so now I have to go 4.5 over. 4.5 over there. And here is my center line. So now you're going to see the fingers are going to be here and here. So that's going to end up being the layout that we see. It's going to be a lot different than anything I ever use, but that bow tie will stay below the thumb. And I'm going to do the exact same layout on this one, on the new Crusher Hybrid, and we're going to go review these. We're going to go throw them, and I'll show you what they look like here in a minute versus some of the other bowling balls that are up. And I will also show you, I'll show you the hammer effect tour. I have a 5-inch pin hammer effect tour, and then I did a 2 and I think it was 2 1/4 or 2.5 inch pin hammer effect tour, and let's go take a look at the difference. All right, so now we've got a fresh 44-foot PBA version 1 pattern out here, and I want to show you the 2 bowling balls that we've got. Or at least, well, the 2 we're going to start with, which is the effect tour. This is my 5-inch pin effect tour. You can see where the pin in CG is there. And then we also have my 2.5-inch pin effect tour. You can see where the pin in CG is there. Now, the reason for being able to go pin up as high as I am with this is because it's a lower flaring bowling ball. It's a lower flaring, lower differential ball, so it won't flare across the thumb on the back. So I can use stronger pin positions on some of the lower differential balls. So we're just going to try and get loose here. But what I want you to really pay attention to is the difference in ball motion off the back of the pattern. Between the 2 bowling balls. And then I'll show you those 2 new ones I just drilled, that Crusher Hybrid and then the new 3D offset as well. But here you go. So this is the 5-inch pin. Let's throw it a couple of shots. You can see how far down the lane it gets, and it waits until the very last moment to really make its motion. Now, yes, these are Both balls are at the same box surface. Haven't done anything different. I'll try to, I'm not quite loose yet, but anyway, we'll try just because to throw the 2.5 inch pin one. See if we notice a difference in motion. You see how much overall strength you see there, how much earlier that ball makes its motion and how much more continuous. So to me, in my eyes, I see the 5-inch pin going forward because it loses its energy so much, or it loses its rotation quicker. And I see the 2.5-inch pin actually lose its rotation more gradual, but overall be stronger. Maybe it wasn't a great shot, but in motion is all we want to pay attention to. I don't care about the pins right now. This is 2.5 inch again. Okay. You can see how much smoother shape that was, at least to my eye, I could see a smoother shape out of that. Now, if I was going to be using that on this pattern, obviously I would be probably using more surface. So what we see here, if you look at the ball now, what we see is the flare going across here, but it doesn't ever get to the thumb. You can see it gets up to here, but it doesn't catch the thumb on the way back. So now let's throw the 5-inch pin one again. That one just doesn't want to pick up as soon. Doesn't quite get into a good motion. It feels like I talked about with that core, where we've got it going this way and it's trying to get here and then it just goes woof and it just drops off. That's what I was talking about. So now that's the 2.5-inch pin. Much closer, much better ball reaction. So now, I mean, clearly I need more surface than that. That needs to hook sooner. Honestly, on this pattern, I'm probably using urethane to start anyway. But that's all right. So now, if my theory is correct, this ball shouldn't hit the thumb and should still flare pretty good, but this is that 3D offset. You can see the pin is much lower. Try and stand in the same spot. And it didn't hit the thumb. Let's take a look at the flare. That looked really good. So stronger cover, more differential. Maybe not stronger cover necessarily, but more differential. And see? So now we look. Same type of thing, but you can see much more flare. Flare rings are spread apart. And then on the way back through, it doesn't catch the thumb. It doesn't. It gets to here. Right underneath that bow tie is, the bow tie is technically down here. So it doesn't catch the thumb. But if I throw a different ball, watch this. One of my first experimental balls was with the Origin. You can see this one. Mass bias is right on the thumb basically, but big, tall pin, 2.5-inch pin. Now watch and listen to this ball when it gets down lane. This one does catch the thumb on the back part of the lane. Right at the end, you can hear it start to go thump, 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 thump. I don't know if you can hear it. I can definitely hear it. But I'll show you the flare on it. Still rolls pretty good, good motion. But yeah, so now you can see the back flare over here. And the dry flares go all the way up here and catch across that thumb at the very end. Flare's great, but it's the wrong VAL number. Needed the lower pin, bigger VAL number. Let's throw the red ball again. Got the offset. Somehow that struck. Now I will say it definitely needs a little bit more rotation on it, but it's not catching the thumb, so that's good. And it still flares like a monster. You're still seeing tons of flare. See how widespread those are still? So anybody that tells you under 3 3/8 doesn't flare, it lowers the flare, remember, you got to get to a certain spot. You got to get low enough. I think it's 1.5 inches, I'm not sure. All right, but here we go. Now I'm going to try and rotate it a little bit from there and see what the difference is. Rolling 2 pins is the difference, baby. Yeah, I missed way right. Missed a bunch to the right, and that's okay. Again, this would be a urethane type of spot, but these also give me that controllable look, the controllable slower shape. See if I can not miss right now. There you go. Yeah, so see, so now more rotation gets that to really continue and really get going. The question is, will it allow me to start going left and still get through the pins? And that still didn't hit the thumb. It's not even close. The bow tie is way below the thumb now. And the back flares, now they don't get to the thumb. They get to the mass bias. So I've still got 2 inches before it ever gets to the thumb. So now from here, if I move 3 and still really rotate it, 3 and 2, let's see if that's enough. Tripping 4s, that one I missed a little left, but ball motion wise, that's exactly what I'm looking for. 5-inch pin from there, missing left goes dead through the face for 6. Let me try one more with this ball, and then we'll throw that Crusher Hybrid and see if it does the right thing. Way right. Oh, it doesn't matter. Way right, and it still gets there. So this is the ball motion I'm looking for. Now I just got to get sharper. I got to figure out how to throw better shots. I've got a week. I bowled a lot over the last week, and then I took a couple of days off. And now I'm going to be bowling a ton every day for the next 9 days, 10 days, whatever it is, leading up to the US Open. 7 days, I believe. So now we'll go back to where we started. Now we got the Crusher Hybrid. Same layout. I guess I should show you so you guys don't call me a liar, but it does have that same layout on it. Another big ASIM core. Move back to where we originally were throwing shots before I moved left. Much better. Doesn't hit the thumb. Very smooth motion. Again, needs rotation. Needs rotation. Now, will rotation make it too responsive off the dry? Because that's probably like, it's maybe 35, 40 degrees of rotation, if that. So, yeah, that one didn't get close to the thumb either, so that's good. So now let's make that same move. This is going to be a 4 and 2. Much better. I like this. So I'm in play, not making great shots. If I'm making good shots, it's a whole lot better. But the bad shots are getting 9 instead of getting 6. Let's see if this shinier cover, if I get it going to the right like the Assault did, see if this one starts to pick up a little bit better. Not that far. Shoot. Cannot do that unless you're throwing your thing. But see, this is what I mean though. You start getting in there You leave makeable spares. Now we're bowling on tough pattern here. We're not bowling on a house shot. So we're looking for the smoother, rounder shape. You don't want it to boomerang down lane. It's a better shot. See, there we go. Now that still looks like it's getting going down lane, but that's a change of direction and continuation rather than a change of direction and then going forward. We want the ball to be facing up towards the 5-pin, not facing up straight right of the 5-pin. Let me try that again. A little left. A little left, makeable spare. Definitely not sharp. Gotta fix the tape. Let's throw some of the other ones. All right, so now we go towards something like the level. And you'll see a big difference in motion here. Go back to where we originally started. I guess it's not a huge difference in motion, but this is again that lower differential. This has got a stronger layout on it. So I'm able to use the stronger layout on this and it still retains the axis tilt a little bit better, but you can see the difference in the flare on this. Much smaller flare rings, kind of like a urethane ball. Very nice. It's still got that big pin up. This is a 4.5-inch pin. So essentially the same as like a 2.5-inch pin, but the opposite direction. So this one has the opportunity to fall off the cliff, but this cover being stronger and smoother with a lower differential helps me out. Just moved right. See, and this is what I mean. This is exactly why I would be using a urethane ball. I'd probably be using my black hammer, the hammer pearl on this for that reason. Something that's going to read sooner. And then I would be going to these other bowling balls later in the block. These other bowling balls would be really good later in the block. So you see that level. The level looks really good. So then I can go to something like, let's say this 5-inch Effect Tour as I go left. I don't know if it'll get there or not, but I'm going to just show you the motion from further left with getting around it once the lanes break down. You get in there and you see that quicker motion. You see the wider range you can get with it. And it trips a 4-pin. So not something I can use on the fresh because of how responsive it is to the friction. You can see that one doesn't really lay off. That one doesn't lay down much. Whereas if I try to play that same part of the lane with the other effect, so now this is the 2.5-inch pin effect. Let's see what happens. I can't even tell you. I imagine it's probably closer to like flat 10 area, but let's find out. Or not. Wow, okay, that actually continued better than I thought it would. I mean, that's a good sign. And that was overall stronger. Rounder shape, stronger overall. Let me go a few more left with it. Take a look, see what it does. My fear, and I'll talk about that at the end, my fear of using these types of layouts was I never was allowed to go left with them. But I don't know if that's really the case watching this ball. Might have to speed up a little bit. I love the motion. I love how it picks up and rounds out and continues going. It doesn't. See, I can really show you the bow tie now that I'm in all the oil. See that? The bow tie right here. Way down with lower tight flare rings. It's kind of nice. All right, going left again. Let's see if I can really get this one there. Will that hook? Wow, that's surprising. That is the 2.5-inch pin, folks. So you can see it still creates the flare. Now let me go to, I know this is a really long video, but I want to give you guys enough info, enough shots, enough visual of seeing these types of things. Now we're going to throw that Crusher Hybrid in there. Big ASIM core, big flare. What's it going to do from these bigger angles? It really gets going, really picks up. Y'all notice how I haven't split yet though? Notice how it hasn't been such a violent motion to where it just boomerangs through the head pin? I'm tripping 4 pins out, I'm tripping 4 sevens out. I'm staying out of trouble. So this ball is gonna force me to go a few more left, because it is a bigger core, really trying to get going. Lots of rotation. Yeah, nobody's ever gonna convince me that you can't use shorter pins to get the ball to continue from further left. Because now you can rotate it more and not have to worry about it going crazy off of the friction. And I'll get up against the ball return with this thing. Again, this is 44-foot flat PBA pattern. It's tough. It still swishes a 7 out. A little too far down the lane, but we're using a shiny hybrid cover on a pattern that would require more surface. So now let's go to, let me throw the Assault once, the 3D offset. So this layout for me is kind of like, because they're 2.5-inch pin, they're kind of like a 4.5-inch pin for most people. I have to go the opposite direction though, because my tilt is so low. I'm gonna try to throw the Assault in the same general area. Look at that. Look at that. There's no way. There's no way I've been doing this wrong my entire life. Wow. All right, y'all, so that was really the test. I mean, you saw the proof's in the pudding. We're bowling on something tougher. Now, where I really need to test this theory is once the lanes get crazy down lane. Once there's a bunch of urethane going down the lane and they get tight down lane, will these balls still be able to make that type of motion from further left? Or will I just be able to then use the 5-inch pin bowling balls that I had originally once they do get carried down and I go further left? That's my question. But I think as far as the middle ground is concerned, my issues with getting a ball to stop being so forward, like even the 5-inch pins, they get going so forward so fast, they fall off, that core falls off the cliff so much once they see the friction that they just get forward. And if I don't have enough rotation, which I am a very low axis tilt, lower rotation type of player, I can rotate it, but I'm more naturally comfortable keeping the ball in my angles in front of me, more forward. And when that happens, those 5-inch pins just seem to fall off the cliff and go forward, and they're facing towards more like the 9-pin than they are the 5-pin. They're not going through the pins. They're not having the correct angle to where if I miss a little left, they're tripping 4 pins and getting out the 4-7 and only leaving like a 6-pin or a 10-pin rather than leaving a big 4 or a 4-6, which if I pull up my stats from easybowlingstats.com, if I pull up the stats from last year's tour on some of these patterns, man, it's like every time I missed, that's what happened. I'm leaving a 210 or a big 4 every single time. I didn't have that motion that was able to do the right thing. And when I did, I bowled big games. When I was able to use the bigger bowling balls like a Pride Dynasty and keep it controlled and in front of me, I bowled 250, 260 in those games. But when it came to the lanes getting beat up and me having to open my angles up and create rotation, my layouts, and I know everybody thought layouts didn't matter. Again, I addressed that in the beginning. My layouts were causing my ball to go too forward because of my low tilt. I'm going further and further pins thinking that's gonna help. All that's doing is slowing down the transition of the core in the beginning to get it to the top, but then when it hits the friction, it goes zoom, right down like that. Now that I've got the cores facing this way, they can stay slow all the way through and continue round out until they get stable. So it works out in my favor for a low tilt player. This actually helps a lot. So I hope you learned something today. Tell me in the comments below what you think. Was this informational? Is this going to help you? Are you a lower tilt player? Do you know how to find your tilt? Let's talk about finding tilt and stuff in a different video, or I actually have talked about it before, but I'll redo it but if you want to go find it, go find that video of how to find your own axis tilt. But that's all I got for you. I know it's a really long video. I appreciate everybody sticking around. But until next time, I guess I'm out of here. We'll see you guys later. Take care.